quote, "Yes, I'm Eve's son. That's not something I hide from. But my appointment isn't only about family ties. It's about what Ubisoft needs at this moment." Hell of a statement. What Ubisoft needs, and what Charlie Gilmour is defending very poorly, is nepotism. Ubisoft needs nepotism because they need to keep it in the family. We've got the new $1.8 billion subsidiary. It's currently unnamed. We're going to call it Tubisoft. It's finally starting to be fleshed out. And as it is fleshed out, we see that Ubisoft has made sure there are Gilmour family members in control. Because look, having spent all that time and money making sure that Tencent backed the family's position, they are not going to risk someone else running the show as they now start changing how the whole company works. And they start trying to spin a big public narrative about how, no, this time it's different, we're different, the change is going to be real. Let me know, after you finish the video, how much you believe that will be the case. So it's been a fairly busy few weeks over at Ubisoft. The company just held their annual general meeting in Paris. And here's the interesting bit. It was actually open to the public. And that meant they had to balance investor questions with those of public stockholders. Obviously, there's room for drama there, and we did learn a few things. As an example, on Stop Killing Games, Ubisoft said that they will comply with the law, and they claim that they help people upgrade whenever service ends. They also said they're still not worried about the culture war stuff around Assassin's Creed Shadows. They blamed brand fatigue for Outlaws failing and also for the quality targets being missed. They actually teased the new Prince of Persia remake. I will not hold my breath on that. It's been, years and years and years. So apparently they say it's coming through. And they also tacitly confirmed reports of a new first-person Ghost Recon game. That's actually exciting. Maybe. Asterisks. I don't trust them. But there was one good thing I didn't expect. They actually confirmed that they're interested in smaller AA games, right? That's the type of game that broadly we've kind of lost in the market. And it's where so much creativity used to be, because those were games not saddled by, $200 million budgets. And after all that came the pseudo-apology. Eve, who is the CEO, addressed those impacted by 3 executives who recently were actually convicted in France. Yes, convicted of enabling a culture of sexual harassment at the company. He also claimed the new procedures would stop that sort of thing from happening again. But here's the thing. I've just rocketed through all of that stuff because honestly, the real news was not at the annual general meeting with public stockholders and such. No, the biggest changes actually came in the days before, because we actually now know who runs the Tencent-backed subsidiary. This is the one that exists to control Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six. It's quite literally Ubisoft splitting, and as it turns out, this is just stage 1 of the plan. Ubisoft went to Variety for these announcements because, it's Variety. It's a bastion of nice, comforting corporate interviews with, lots of little softballs. I mean, hell, even the nepotism question was softballed. This stuff is all calculated. I mean, even thinking of the timing here, Netflix greenlit the Assassin's Creed series a few days before this interview. And it's an interview that's, very much about the 2 people who are now running that series, that's designed completely around investor storytelling and confidence. So this Variety thing was a puff piece, one designed to announce new leadership comfortably. No hard questions. So, what were they announcing? Well, they were announcing the 2 co-CEOs of Tubisoft. We're going to call it Tubisoft because it's the second Ubisoft company, and it actually still doesn't have a proper name. First up, we've got Charlie Gilmour, and if Gilmour sounds familiar to you, it should. Yves Gilmour is the founder and CEO of Ubisoft overall, so that's them keeping it in the family. Now, he's returned to the company after just under 4 years away, and by the way, those 4 years did involve a crypto venture, because of course they did. The second guy then is Christophe Duren. Here's the fun thing. He's the cousin of the overall CEO, Yves Gilmour. So they're very much, again, keeping it in the family. So essentially, that means he's Charlie's cousin once removed. Apparently then, there were no better applicants for the job. The only people they could find were in the family. What if I told you there's almost certainly a pretty major reason why they did that? I'll get to that in a second. Now, in the interview, they explain their roles. Essentially, that Charlie will be handling the what, and Duren will be managing the how. And what does that mean? Well, it basically means that Charlie will decide what Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, or Rainbow Six are actually offering to players, right? Different types of game experience, all that stuff. Duren is then going to be making sure that it happens, that the tech exists, that the teams are supported, that the games actually get shipped. That kind of production stuff. And as for why he got the role, well, other than the obvious familial reason, his time away apparently helped. He managed Unagi, a mobile game and Web3 company, because of course there's crypto involved. And he came from mobile experience, actually co-leading one of Ubisoft's mobile teams from 2014 to 2021. Then of course he left to go his own way and do the crypto stuff. Now, his departure wasn't exactly a calm one. It came after Elite Squad used BLM imagery for terrorists in 2020, or at the very least, you know, the common kind of like fist up solidarity imagery, which is also used by BLM. So obviously Ubisoft, big corporate entity, very much did not want to have drama. They want money, not drama. And he left shortly after that. Now what's fun is that Yves Guillemot says that it's his entrepreneurial perspective that's going to be bringing Ubisoft a real strength. You know, an outsider who can shake the company up, by which he means an outsider who is in the family who actually used to work at Ubisoft for quite a long time. Though, being real with you, I would wager, I would put money on it actually being about trust. And this is where you need to know the context of this story. You see, years and years and years ago, Vivendi actually did a hostile takeover of Gameloft. That was a big loss for the Guillemot family. They then tried a hostile takeover of Ubisoft, which actually did fail because of Tencent's help. And recently, they faced activist investors who've been very hostile to to the current leadership. And funnily enough, Tencent have also came in to help them get out of that. So essentially, with that in mind, it's really not a surprise that Ubisoft have decided to close ranks, because basically, family, trust, lineage, right? But then there's the other part of Ubisoft, of it sometimes being a pretty damn shitty place to work. You know, see the 3 executives who were convicted earlier. So Insider Gaming did report that his return came with something specific. An acknowledgement. Apparently, he actually took responsibility for the 2020 controversy. So essentially, they're getting him and they're pairing him with Christophe, who would be seen to be a pair of safe hands. And likely the safest hands they could find. I mean, he's been at Ubisoft since 1990. He ran Ubisoft Montreal since 2020. That means that he shipped Assassin's Creed Shadows. And while that was happening, he took control of all of North America since October 2023. Well, Ubisoft North America, not actual North America. So basically, if you're finding yourself needing to convince Tencent that there's a firm hand in the tiller, someone who's used to operating semi-autonomously from like big Ubisoft in Paris, he's essentially your man. But here's the thing, these figureheads are only part of the story, because in reality, Ubisoft have been planning a complete overhaul for months. Let me know if you think this is going to work. So, before announcing to Ubisoft, the company created something else. They created the Transformation Committee. This is a group of people who basically were tasked with fixing Ubisoft. That could mean a sale. It could mean more layoffs. Essentially, any number of options were possible, and they ended up choosing the deal with Tencent. Now, who was on this committee? Well, it was mostly senior Ubisoft executives, various disciplines, right? Legal was there, HR was there, and they had 100 days to lock in the plan. But that deadline has passed. And it also is a group that included someone rather familiar, Charlie Guillemot. And Yves explained the thinking of that in this interview with Variety, where he basically said they didn't want to pull existing leadership from Ubisoft franchises, so they wanted to lock Charlie in early, someone who could basically step into the new role. But here's where it gets really interesting, right? This new way of governance may spread across all of Ubisoft. And that might seem to you profoundly uninteresting. Who the fuck cares about governance in Ubisoft? But the bit where it could actually matter is, for a very long time, Ubisoft Paris sort of had this like little taste-making division in it. And that basically would be responsible for greenlighting projects. Like, as an example, if you wanted a big Arthurian role-playing game, well, you could have had that, but the tastemakers in Paris cancelled it. So the idea then that it could be a little bit less centralized could actually be a good thing, at least from a creative standpoint. That could be good for us, but it could also be bad, and don't worry, I'll get onto that very shortly in this video. We should probably know how it actually works, so here's how. These will be, quote, coherent creative houses, each reflecting different game experiences. Each one will effectively be like Ubisoft, essentially lopped off and running its own stuff. Autonomous leadership, their own financial goals, their own targets, and we're going to get full details of all this in September. It's essentially them federalizing. Think about it this way. Groups of developers and groups of brands, each with their own specialties, each with their own targets. As an example, one of these creative houses may be focusing on family games, right? Maybe things like Prince of Persia, like Rayman. Another one might be RPGs and strategy. So as an example, it could handle Heroes of Might and Magic and Anno, which, to be fair, are both brilliant. And in the best case scenario, this could really work. In the best case, it does sound really promising and so much better than the shitty centralized group in Paris who do seem to have just made continually stupid decisions that just eroded like so much of what Ubisoft was. Basically, you know the way Ubisoft used to be defined by like radio towers being everywhere in games? That was that like core taste making group basically enforcing that across all of their games. So thus far in the video, it actually does seem like a good thing, right? It seems like these games could flourish. If you're a fan of Anno, as an example, this could be amazing news. But here's the thing. I do not want to be a merchant of false hope, and there absolutely are risks, because this could really go south as well. All right, so Ubisoft is still majority owned by the overall Ubisoft entity, and Tencent has got 25% of Ubisoft. And the reason why is that Tencent wants the economic returns, but the control will stay with Ubisoft. Although obviously Tencent has already got an existing relationship with Ubisoft, because funnily enough, the reason why the Guillemos are still running Ubisoft is that Tencent came to save them a few years ago. Now this current deal is amazing because there's protections against hostile takeovers and stuff that's obviously bad for the Guillemos, but that's just for Ubisoft. And remember, Ubisoft is the thing that's got Far Cry, that's got Assassin's Creed, that's actually got the big money brands. What about the other creative houses? Because as much as Anno's cool and the idea of a modern Heroes of Might and Magic that isn't shit is kind of cool, are we really going to see huge amounts of money go into that? And that then worries me. Will Ubisoft seek outside investment for Rayman, for Splinter Cell? And if so, will investors demand more control? Because you could look at this thing with Tencent and say, I mean, you do exert control, but maybe not as much as you could have. But then again, it's for the likes of Assassin's Creed, which is actually proven to bring in loads of money. For more niche games, for smaller games, I really doubt they'll be getting any deals as good as the one that they've got here. And even if protections exist against the likes of hostile investors, well, that's good for the Guillemos, but it's not a guarantee that it's going to be good for us. Not for the smaller games that people deeply love, like Anno. Now, let's assume that Ubisoft leadership isn't stupid. I know, quite an assumption, but let's assume it. They won't expect Anno to match Assassin's Creed revenue. But what does that mean for their riskier projects, for their non-live service games? Will they get subsidized by the bigger teams, by the bigger titles? Now, this is not just idle speculation, because we very recently saw that go very badly. Let's take a look at Electronic Arts. A while ago, they separated their sports division from entertainment. The whole point is they were supposed to stand in their own and, not be commingled in terms of risk. What's actually happened? Well, both are just struggling independently. Entertainment is no longer able to hide behind the EA Sports FC funding. Things like Ultimate Team that somehow just make all the money in the world. So they can't hide behind that. And without that safety net, the entertainment division has absolutely floundered. Is that going to be Ubisoft's future? Because if the only thing you give a shit about is money, then Anno and Heroes of Might and Magic, or the Settlers, are not relevant to you. Assassin's Creed is, right? And while the Guillemot family members do appear to be endless, leadership does actually matter here. I mean, these creative house leaders are going to be crucial, right? You could say that they're fulcrums. Now, do you remember when Ubisoft had big-name creative directors? That was people like Jade Raymond, Clint Hawking, Michel Ancel. Many of them have since left. So where does the new creativity come from, especially if these creative leaders, known for making video games, are now also having to run creative houses as businesses? Is that really their best strength? What's the big takeaway then? Well, analysts entering 2025 predict that Ubisoft would transform. They basically said that by December, the company would not be the same. Do you know what? They were right. That process is underway. We're seeing the creative house's plan essentially stratify the company, turn it into sort of little isolated kingdoms. And there's many ways you could look at that and think, actually, that's good. Actually, that makes sense. Maybe Rayman should not be existing in the same company that's doing Assassin's Creed. Okay, sure, we can say that. But let's look at these appointments. I mean, Charlie Guillemot, Christophe Duran, they're continuity. They're not new blood. They're core Ubisoft. One who's been there for a very, very, very long time, both of whom are literally family. What we essentially see is an Ubisoft that wants to project to the world, hey, we're changing, we're taking bold action, it's going to be great, we're going to get those returns for our shareholders, which we all love and, do hold to be the most important thing in existence. So they're trying to say that. But when you look at these appointments, it's very much not a huge change. But I'll tell you what I actually think, what I really think, having covered this story pretty much with every development since last year. I think that, yeah, sure, they've got Tencent. Maybe Tencent fully backs the Gilmos, right? And they've maybe dealt with these hostile investors, whatever. There's one through line throughout all of this. It starts with how seemingly badly they took losing Gameloft, right? Losing Gameloft to Vivendi in the early 2000s. They took that badly, and since then, almost all of their moves have been about one thing: that the family remains in control. And today's story is absolutely proof of that.
The dilemma surrounding free speech and the online censorship of everything is still ongoing, and now it looks like many games that are being considered to be taboo are at a very high risk of being banned outright. And no, I'm not kidding. Let's get right into it. From the outerhaven.com, GTA and Saints Row series could face removal from digital stores due to payment system pressure. This article originally references another article, as seen here from thegamer.com, which again is claiming that Grand Theft Auto and other mature games are close to being cooked and delisted. This all began over on a website called Zoom, which is a place where people can buy retro games and more. As seen here, Zoom recently posted an update about payment processors and how it will affect their website. As seen here, Zoom was told by concerned parties that payment processors and the censorship of content was going to even affect them, which they have confirmed that it has. As also seen here, they have pushed to include new security measures to protect users, and that many of their users already had problems before being able to buy things due to censorship with these payment processors. But they also plan to not give up and to keep protecting the artistic freedom of games beyond, as they said there. But according to Zoom, and these concerned parties that they spoke to behind the scenes, which according to them are prominent individuals within the games industry that knows what's going on, that according to them, as seen here, games like Grand Theft Auto, Duke Nukem, and Saints Row are all at risk of being delisted on digital storefronts due to what's basically being called content not suitable for general audiences. And if you enjoy the content, consider liking the video, subscribing to keep up to date, and leaving a comment. It helps way more than you realize. But as they state here, which also reads, reports suggest that the campaign pressuring payment systems is led by the Australian group Collective Shout, which opposes the objectification of women in media. The group had previously staged protests against Grand Theft Auto 5, claiming that the game promotes violence. The current developments raise concerns about which other games may face restrictions from payment processors in the future. The end goal of all of this is to censor these games for being problematic so that they fall in line more so with what these payment processors and these activist groups deem to be acceptable. Grand Theft Auto has already been successfully censored in the past, as seen here in 2022. GTA was actually forced to remove what was called transphobic content by an activist group that targeted Rockstar in the past. Although it was a different group going by OMG, which stands for Out Making Games. Here's their website, which from that flag shield alone, you already know what they're all about. As it says there, by empowering and uniting the community, we can act as one voice to push for real change in the broader games industry across Europe and the UK. Rockstar, which makes GTA by the way, in case you don't know, they're actually from the UK as well, so this is the perfect Molotov digital cocktail if ever there was one. Because if you don't know, the Online Safety Act, which originates in the UK, is a big reason why this is all happening. It's no coincidence either, because again, that Out Making Games group that already censored GTA, it's full of one kind of people from one particular place. Like, let me show you. OMG is sponsored by all kinds of places. As seen here, you got Supermassive Games, they're British by the way. You got No More Robots, also British. Rocksteady, guess where they're from? Yep, British as well. Moji Works and End Dreams, yep, British too. Even at the bottom there, you got Jagex, that's the RuneScape people. Guess where they're located? Yep, the British people too. And Rockstar is British as well, of course. So interesting how one activist group that exists within massive censorship is protected and supported financially and socially by a bunch of other British-born companies to censor what is arguably the most profitable and prolific British company of them all within the game sphere, being of course Rockstar. It's all by design, guys. They're not hiding really anything. It's even worse when websites post stuff that just confirms that the main game they want to dethrone is Grand Theft Auto above anything else, as seen here. The blood-soaked British success story testing Labour's mettle, Grand Theft Auto's cornucopia of gangland vice risks a head-on collision with new online safety laws. So you may be wondering, why are they so headstrong on targeting specifically GTA over any other game? The reason is actually pretty simple, because GTA is understandably the biggest game ever. It makes the most money, has copies sold in the millions. Everyone across the world knows what GTA is, even if you don't play games. While they, as in these activist groups and governments, could go for lower hanging smaller games maybe and censor them first, instead what they're doing is going for the biggest fish of them all. And if they can censor GTA, it actually makes their work much easier for them in the long run, because if they got the biggest one first, the rest will just follow suit, because if GTA can be censored, anything can be censored by comparison. Rockstar's big problem here is that their headquarters is in the UK, which means they uniquely must adhere to the laws of their sovereign country, and they happen to exist in what is arguably one of the most censored police state countries in the first world. So if you ask me, this isn't really a matter of if GTA gets censored, but when at this point. As rstreet.com's article says, UK's Online Safety Act censors the internet, a preview of US proposals. As it states here in their article, the OSA, or Online Safety Act, according to new UK rules, social media sites and search engines are required to prevent minors from accessing content deemed harmful, which has an extremely broad definition. It includes not only adult sites, but also violent and hateful content. This is how they're going to censor all the games over there at least, and eventually, if they can, spill it over into other countries. You see, Grand Theft Auto has things like not only shootings, but also gambling, strip clubs, and much, much more too. All of this exists within GTA because the game is designed, of course, to be made for adults. True, kids do play it. However, those kids that do play it are able to because their parents allow them to play it. So what they're doing here is stepping in between the parents and the kids, and really also the adults too. Because it's not like GTA, Saints Row, Duke Nukem, you name it, is going to suddenly have a censored and also uncensored version of the same game available to buy. It'll be much easier for Rockstar if they simply censor the game across the board so that they're able to sell the game in countries that adhere to the OSA regulations, which would be a massive blow to not only the content within the single player campaign, but more importantly, and this is the real cash cow, GTA Online. I covered some of this in a previous video, but it bears repeating how far-reaching the censorship goes within the OSA rules, as it states here. Content which depicts real or realistic serious violence against a person. It also includes content which is abusive and which targets any of the following characteristics: race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, disability, or gender reassignment. It even includes content which realistically depicts serious violence against a fictional creature. Effectively meaning that all of these and more can and likely will be placed against GTA and other games too. This also severely hampers GTA as a series if things like harm against others cannot be shown. And coupling that with deeming anything considered hateful content as being grounds for banning, Rockstar will have to do their best to circumvent this, which, considering what their game is, it's kind of likely impossible. As rstreet posts here, this means based on this, even episodes of like SpongeBob SquarePants that could even be banned under this, considering how broad these rules have become. So this Online Safety Act is already in effect for users on X within the UK. As seen here, it has already begun to filter content based on each country's demands. Posts involving violence or assault can't even be viewed unless you're 18 years of age or older and can prove it as well. The UK has even blocked videos of migrants being attacked by police, and even blocked videos or even stories about people smoking, drinking, and more. Even Spotify is pushing this as well, if you can believe it, and as stated here, this push by the OSA is also putting people's information at risk in terms of massive data breaches or in general just straight up unethical use of their citizens' private information. Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row getting decimated or going as far as being delisted even on digital storefronts is an alarming reality that can and could become true. And I do think the implementation of this censorship is a hell of a time for it to happen, considering how much money and time has already been put into GTA 6's development as a whole. It doesn't help when Collective Shout, that's the Australian group that was founded in 2009, as seen here from The Gamer, already attempted to remove GTA from storefronts, claiming that the game allowed violence against women. Clearly, these people don't play GTA because you can be violent towards literally anyone in those games. It's an open world sandbox with insane physics. It's not really the game developer's sole responsibility for what happens in their games. People are allowed to do as they please. That's why it's called player choice. And after all, none of this is even real. It's a video game. And there has been plenty of studies already confirming that violent video games do not lead to violent crimes. Although usually it's people being censored, reduced, or ridiculed for a long time that causes them to just lash out in response. In my opinion, stuff like what's happening now will only cause people to seek out more extreme material, and these government types only really have themselves to blame. But maybe that's the point of this. They want to frustrate and limit the populace on purpose to create an organic reaction to the censorship, to then use those actions of the populace to censor them even further. And once that hits something like GTA, this screen here, which is photoshopped for now, it's not real, but could eventually become the future of both online video games and mature content in general. Like I said in a previous video, if this censorship nonsense becomes worse, you're going to see a lot of games completely removing any elements that could warrant them an M rating. We're talking violence, gore, blood, swearing, all of it. It could sanitize everything until every AAA game and then some is just everybody stepping on eggshells to keep these types happy that don't play video games in the first place. Then you have people like Mary Miller, who is a congresswoman who works within Illinois, who said this on Twitter. Children should never have access to adult content online. This is something everyone should agree on. Yet many sites refuse to enforce strong age verification. It's time to pass the Screen Act and protect our most innocent. Again, this is being pushed to protect kids when in reality it's just a digital Trojan horse to destroy the ability for adults to do what they want on the internet. Kids are just kind of the byproduct here and honestly just scapegoats. But as seen in the community note, this congresswoman unsurprisingly doesn't understand how the internet works because parental controls already exist and do exactly what she wants. But they want to bypass that. It's the same with games. Before, if you didn't want your kid playing something, you didn't buy it for them. Now the government gets to decide if Grand Theft Auto or God knows what else isn't good enough for you either. And as seen here, a user actually went viral that posted that their Nvidia graphics card cut them out of adjusting their graphical settings on their computer because they're considered a minor. Which I think personally, this is another big problem because GTA won't release at first anyways, of course, on PC. It'll be on PS5 and Xbox. But when it does come to PC and the censorship and nonsense probably will grow and mutate by then, this could easily be what happens. A minor person, gamer, whatever, wants to play GTA on their computer. Parents say, okay, give them their credit card to buy the game. They download it, you open the game, Steam then auto-checks your account, finds out that you're not an adult. And even if you somehow bypass that now, your literal graphics card is also going to notice that you're not 18 either. So if either of these things happens, what really happens then? I mean, Steam pings it and you're cooked and then you're out of luck to play GTA 6 when it drops? I think the other alternative is you won't even be able to buy the game, but even if you do, it'll just check your computer and go, you're a minor, and then you can't play it either way anyways, even if you bought it. So what's even more obscene is that these government people in the UK especially are trying to also ban VPNs if you don't know. Yet they also got exposed recently here by Politico to be using VPNs themselves to bypass their own censorship laws that they have enacted in the first place. And they're also charging the public for their VPN usages by using taxpayer money so they can browse the net and it's fine. And you can see that on screen. But if you use VPNs yourself, you're doing something illegal, of course, and funny how that works, isn't it? These people are hypocrites, and the fact that it threatens GTA specifically and all the other games, that is very concerning to me. For example, Tweaktown reported as seen here that there's understandably a lot riding on GTA 6 performing well, and that's putting it lightly. This comes from Michael Packner, who you may recognize. He has been in many interviews with game journalists over the years on all kinds of sites and then some. This is him on screen. You probably recognize him. But anyway, here's what Michael said about GTA 6's potential. I expect a $100 price point for the game. The game will be immensely profitable. It will likely generate $10 billion lifetime and another $500 million annually from GTA Online. To put it in perspective for you, GTA 5 alone has sold more copies as one single game than the entire Final Fantasy series combined across 40 years of games being released. So those numbers that Pachter brings up are definitely something that GTA 6 could reach. However, this was before the Online Safety Act threatening to censor GTA got, kind of thrown around, I guess. Because if things like shooting, racing, gambling, and more are suddenly not allowed in the online version of GTA, how exactly will Rockstar make their money then? Because GTA's online aspect is essentially a digital life for many. You get your own place, you buy cars, you do heists, you shoot each other too, and much more. It's kind of like Fortnite. It's like a platform more than just one single game. But if GTA 6 loses its M rating or removes core mini games and subject matter, then is it even GTA anymore? My answer would be no. And since some rumors say that GTA 6 has a budget of somewhere near $1.5 billion, which I know sounds ridiculous, but again, this is Grand Theft Auto we're talking about. This game would be the ultimate game if it isn't censored. But with Rockstar unfortunately operating and existing within the lion's den that is the UK, any law their government pushes would immediately become law for them. Sure, Take-Two, that's the publisher of GTA, could fight the British government into not censoring what is, obviously, their most anticipated game product of all time, but I really doubt the UK government cares. Because it's not really about money for these people, as a Joker would say, it's all truly about sending a message in this instance. That if they can make GTA kneel, then all of us will kneel in unison and then their work will pretty much be complete. As I reported before in another video as seen here, age verification is already coming to GTA 5's online mode. And there was actual code grabbed to prove that Rockstar is implementing this into their game as we speak. So if GTA 5's online is getting age verified, this means that GTA 6's will absolutely just follow suit. There's no way that they would just stop at GTA 5 here, which means that these rules and regulations have probably already begun to sink their teeth, if you will, into the flesh of Rockstar's biggest franchise. Wow, I can't wait for future games where guns are explicitly stated to be Nerf guns. Or how much you want to bet a lot of newer games are going to opt out of showing real life violence in their games and will instead make in game lore explanations in order to state that the shooting and whatnot in their games are all just virtual reality, so it's not real anyways, or something within that world, therefore nobody's actually dying, so you can't censor it. I know it all sounds like a joke, but it really isn't. This makes me wonder how this will go over for other games too. Resident Evil, Souls-likes with blood in them, Space Marine 2 in its sequel, which also has a lot of blood in it too. And there's so many horror games out there that could also be affected by this too very easily. These companies and governments, they just want absolute control, but there is some hope. For example, Take-Two, which owns Rockstar and publishes all of their games as seen here, is headquartered in the United States, not the UK. And I do think if these verification checks and whatnot end up getting too egregious, Take-Two could hypothetically take the UK government to court claiming that they're trying to censor a product that was paid for by American citizens. Because obviously Take-Two is funding GTA 6. It's their money mostly. Their support is what's like allowing this to happen in the first place. So if GTA 6 were to get banned or censored or anything else, would that then be a direct violation of Take-Two's Second Amendment and then some? I leave that question to you. Let me know what you think about that one. Sure, they could argue, but Rockstar, who makes the game, is British, but again, they're still owned by an American company in the end. True, it would be a different story, of course, if Take-Two was British, but thankfully they aren't. Maybe that could be Rockstar and GTA's saving grace here. However, if the regulations bleed over into American soil, they're as good as cooked. But that could be their ace in the hole. So not all hope is lost yet, guys, but what do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you as always for watching. Subscribe to keep up to date. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.
I am willing to boycott the internet over this. I'm willing to boycott YouTube, any platform that begins to require my government ID to access it. I am willing to walk away from. And I just want to put that out there because I think that ideas have a great way of building momentum, and I would be willing to walk away if I felt that together we could make a real change. And that's how important I think that this situation could potentially be. I joked in my last video about the UK and the ridiculous new rules that have been put into place, but it turns out that it was way more far-reaching than I expected or realized. Basically, within the last week, there has been a very orchestrated push across the entire West to censor the internet. And that includes the USA, that includes Europe, Australia, Canada, and I'm actually a little bit worried. And there were a lot of people who are very worried about what it could very likely lead to in the future. And I honestly think that it's something that we need to act on right now. And you guys know I don't fearmonger on this channel. I like to try to stay balanced about things, but this one I genuinely feel is quite alarming. YouTube will now require you to use your government ID to not be restricted on August 13th for United States citizens. You didn't read that wrong. I said USA, not the UK. The censorship is coming for everyone and it's getting worse. The UK is also now talking about banning VPNs so that people can't use them to get around this. Using a VPN isn't going to protect you if ISPs and the websites/apps you care about require or mandate ID verification with continuous biometric verification, meaning to be scanning your face at all times when consuming content. Oh my gosh, okay. The free internet is dead, your every move tracked. Somebody said we need an alternative to this internet. I actually totally agree. If we can have an alt internet. We've said it before, but the new act of punk rock is going to be a return to offline life, technology-free living. The Amish are ahead of the game. I get that, and I do get that, but at the same time, the internet has provided us with so much power as a community and so much information that we didn't have access to before, and I do believe that that's what governments are scared of. So we don't want to give that up. You guys know how important free internet has been for us, and having the ability to speak freely, talk out about things that the government does that's not acceptable, etc., etc. It's our greatest power, and I honestly think that they're trying to take that away and they're beginning the process now. And like many of the government's actions that we've had problems with in the last few years, once again, it all just doesn't quite add up. And I'm going to go through that with you in this video. Cowboy Jesus says, maybe I'm being a bit over the top in my thinking here, but am I the only one that imagines it starts with age verification and the pathway ends with checking your social credit score? Is Cowboy Jesus the only one thinking that? Let me know in the comments. Just in, YouTube will begin using AI to monitor user behavior and psychology to determine whether viewers in the US are over or under the age of 18. This person says it starts with age as an excuse and then next it's your social score. How about doing some real work on identifying pedos? The other thing that appeared on my X account in the last few days is when I'm looking at people's comments, I get like a notification saying that I'm not able to see all comments because they're currently using AI to assess my behaviors to try to figure out if I'm over the age of 18. New social media restrictions which require age verification now includes a new secret. Here's something you probably didn't know. You will be required to fully identify in order to use Apple and Google Maps on your phone. Yep, Labour now have live location-based tracking. Spotify in the UK restricts some music behind facial verification and ID. Age verification is required for certain content. Use our facial age check. If inaccurate, verify with ID. Imagine restricting music. This person says, delete Spotify and use Stuff.io. You will then own your stuff, not merely have a controlled subscription. So that's interesting. Get off Spotify and onto another platform. Mild hassle at first, but you'll be happier afterwards by not supporting communism. Apple withdrew its data protection tool after a UK government security dispute. Earlier this month, the UK government requested access to the data, which even Apple cannot currently view. So basically, as I understand it, Apple actually just removed the feature completely in order to protect people's privacy and data from the government. Because if they kept the feature in place, the UK government was demanding that they give them the data. So absolutely crazy that actually the technology company is trying to protect people's data from the government. Australia's digital ID and human verification system facilitating Labour's e-safety laws will primarily use Israeli firm AU10TIX for verification. Authentics creates digital twins for digital biometric identification. It's just a bit odd. X now requires ID for monetization. Every creator and everyone who aspires to be on a monetized X creator must oppose this. If you don't, there's a good chance your ID will end up in the hands of Israeli intelligence. The company that X uses to verify its users' ID is an Israeli company founded by members of the Israeli intelligence units Shin Bet and Unit 8200. The company responsible for verifying people's ID on X is called Authentics. The CEO, Ron Atzon, was a member of Israel's intelligence unit 8200. His father was once the treasurer of the Likud party, Netanyahu's party, in Israel. Authentics also has a history of helping the Israeli military with military surveillance and intelligence gathering, founded in 2002 as the technology arm of a Dutch firm called ICTS International. ICTS International was established in 1982, also by former members of Israeli intelligence unit Shin Bet. This is an extreme security risk. That was in May 2024 that took place. A lot of people in the UK are outraged, especially because of the massive hypocrisy that's going on right now. They, a few days ago, introduced this new Safety Act, censoring the internet in order to protect children, is what they're saying. Within a few days of introducing that censorship, Channel 4, which is one of the main UK TV channels, aired a graphic television show about Bonnie Blue. At 9 p.m, when children are often still awake, families are watching television, and people were saying, this is absolutely ridiculous and hypocritical. You've censored the internet, and yet you're showing this awful graphic stuff that nobody wants to see anyway. I have never talked about Bonnie Blue on this channel, and I never intended to, because I don't think that people like her deserve any airtime. I think people like her should just be ignored. But people are outraged. They're outraged at the hypocrisy from the government. And there's a lot more that doesn't add up about all of this. I wrote out a few questions that I feel like they should have asked when they decided to introduce these rules. Number one, does the benefit outweigh the massive cost to people's privacy and freedom? I personally don't think so. I'd like to know what you guys think though. It's really important that we do express our opinion in times like these.
We're not censoring anyone. We've got some measures which are there to protect children, in particular from sites like suicide sites. We've had too many cases in the United Kingdom of young children taking their own lives.
The other question I have is, has the government gone to such massive efforts to stop the top 5 causes of death to children in the UK, which, by the way, suicide is not one of them. So number 1 is congenital malformations, number 2 is cancers, number 3 is transport accidents, falls, poisoning, number 4 is respiratory diseases such as pneumonia, and number 5 is sudden death syndrome. Self-harm and suicide actually comes in at number 7, with 913 children a year dying from self-harm or suicide. And as tragic as that is, and it's so heartbreaking and it needs to be addressed, I just wonder if there are other ways that you can address it that doesn't impose on every single person in the UK's freedom and free speech and privacy. The other question I have is, why didn't they care about the spike in child suicides during the lockdowns that they enforced during COVID? And why does it always so happen that the solutions that they suggest coincidentally give more government control over people's lives and less freedom for the citizens? And they always say that it's because they're trying to protect you. My next question is, are there alternative ways to protect children on the internet that aren't so invasive to people's privacy? Sam Adams says, to anyone saying, think of the kids, I pose, think of the parents not raising their kids. It's not the rest of the world's job to raise your kids and make a safe space for them. That's your job. The world shouldn't be punished for your inability to do your job. Yes, exactly. Once again, why are we in a situation where the government thinks that it should parent people's children instead of the actual parents making the decisions? Why will the government not just allow parents to be parents and make an environment where parents have more time to spend with their children and watch their children and be with their children? Well, we know why. We know why the government doesn't want that. But that's my question. I promise you, long-term government is not going to be a good parent to children. I think it's funny that everything we were told was bad about China is actually being done in Europe. Romania rigs its own election and jails the winner. UK bans VPNs, independent news sites, and censors Twitter. EU regularly jails independent journalists. Germany prepares to ban its largest political party. The EU is a dystopian nightmare. Yeah. Clint says, isn't it effing amazing how worldwide all of these incredibly sophisticated censorship measures are literally appearing in the last week? There have already been some pretty funny situations, like I told you the other day, with people using Norman Reedus from the Death Stranding game. Apparently, there's also been like 300,000 people using the picture of Keir Starmer's face to sign up to the internet. So obviously people are going to try to find their way around this. And by the way, in another video, I'm going to talk about the things that we can do to get around these rules if they do end up coming and affecting us, or maybe you are in the UK and it's already affecting you. So I'm going to go through that as well. Free speech is over in the UK. Here's what the UK government can now do under the Online Safety Act. Scan your private messages, WhatsApp, iCloud, Signal. Wow. Censor protest videos from X and YouTube. Oh my gosh. You know, the mainstream media already does so much censorship when it comes to protests. How will we be able to know what's going on? It's, you know, we won't be able to access reality. It's crazy. And I say this because I truly believe that this is going to extend beyond the UK. Force ID checks and facial scans to access social media. Search your cloud files, Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive. Order surveillance without a warrant. Silent dissent, even Wikipedia is under legal threat. They say it's to protect children, but what they've really done is give Ofcom and government agencies sweeping powers to force tech firms to weaken encryption, demand access to personal chats, censor anything they deem harmful, even without a warrant. Honestly, I cannot believe. I mean, I can, but I can't, if you know what I mean. Ex-lawyer says, here's what's probably going to happen. 1. Multiple countries other than the UK will demand age verification to access adult content. 2. VPN usage will spike. 3. Those countries will then outlaw VPNs, claiming they are doing so to protect the children and fight terrorism. 4. They will then create voluntary, uniform and centralized online IDs to make age verification easier. 5. Then the IDs will become required and the government will run AI on all of your internet activity, which they can link to you personally. 6. Eventually this data will be made available to private companies who will use it to judge your creditworthiness, the prices you pay, etc. 7. Then the government will begin using the data to proactively fight crime. So I wanted to tell you a story about in Ireland, where I'm originally from. Water for households in Ireland is free. And, you know, it rains so much in Ireland, but also politicians, when they had increased like certain tax rates over the years, they would keep saying, oh, that's, you know, the water charges are included in this tax increase. And then about 8 years ago or so, they started to put water meter readings into everybody's homes. And they basically started lining up to try to charge people for water. There was so much backlash. People went crazy over it. They were very, very upset about it. And it was received incredibly badly.
Absolute disgrace.
Here, here.
Sick of it all now. And everybody in this country, stand up now. Get up.
To the point that the politicians just couldn't go forward with it. They had to scrap it completely, even though they'd put all these smart meters in everybody's houses. To this day, the politicians have never brought it up again. They've never tried it again. They've never even discussed it again. They're scared to, because the Irish people reacted so badly and there was so much backlash. And it's just a reminder to say that if we come together and stand up against something that's not right, and you know, something that we can clearly see what their agenda is, we can actually make changes. We can actually put them in their places. And honestly, politicians and government needs to be put into its place, from what I can see, regularly, because it just constantly tries to overreach into people's lives. But the good news is people have already started fighting this.
On what grounds are you suing Ofcom?
So Ofcom has awoken the screaming eagle, and they're really not going to like the results of what comes next. In the United States, we have this thing called the First Amendment, and the First Amendment protects an American's right to talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime about anything they choose without interference from anybody, not Congress, not a senator, not the governor, not even the president, and certainly not a British unelected bureaucrat. Ofcom has been sending letters to my clients, and I have intercepted and read every single one of the 4 companies, American social media companies they've targeted with this. And I have forwarded all that correspondence to the White House. And the White House is really ticked off. For context about how seriously we take these things in the United States, if I were to do what Ofcom did and threaten an American in the free exercise in of their constitutional rights, I would be subject to a 10-year federal prison term. If I paired it with a threat to kidnap, the maximum penalty is death. They have no idea what they've woken up. The empire is extremely cheesed off. You know, Lord Palmerston said in 1850, he invoked the famous Roman saying, "Civis Romanus sum," when the British Empire was running the show, to describe the idea that if you mess with any Briton anywhere on the planet, you're going to have to deal with everybody. Well, you picked on an American, and now you got all of us to deal with.
As individuals, we don't have a lot of power, but together we really do. And our ability to come together is at risk right now if this goes down the road that I think it's going to go down. If it comes to having to sign up to websites and apps using your government ID, I suggest resist, walk away, boycott in whatever way that you can, because it can progress to something much worse. And right now, the internet is our power, and I think that's why they're targeting it. I'll provide ways to get around the censorship, give you a list of alternative apps and websites to turn to, and provide updates about all of this in another video. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time.
Valve, the company behind Steam, is at the center of a major new class action lawsuit. The core of this problem, a massive contract dispute. Filed just hours ago, the lawsuit alleges that Valve is breaking its own promises by refusing to pay over $20 million in legal fees for thousands of cases filed against them that could lead to billions of dollars being paid out. In this video, we'll break down the entire story from the confidential slideshow Valve got its hands on to the events that led to this new lawsuit. To understand this, we have to go back to 2012. That's when Valve added something called a mandatory arbitration clause to the Steam subscriber agreement that everyone clicks agree on. Simply put, a mandatory arbitration clause is part of a contract that forces you to settle any disagreements with the company outside of a traditional courtroom. Instead of suing them, you have to go through a private, less formal process called arbitration. This process is often faster and cheaper than a court case. At the time, Gabe Newell even called class action lawsuits a shakedown, and the company said this new system would be faster and better for everyone. Though there are some people who argue against arbitration, calling it unfair, believing that the arbitrators would favor the business. For Valve though, they do it all through the AAA, the American Arbitration Association, which is seen as one of the largest arbitrators in the world, which claims to have protections against any unfairness. It's also important to note that this isn't Valve's only legal battle right now. For example, there is the Publishers vs. Valve antitrust class action lawsuit, which is over Steam's 30% fee. Consumers vs. Valve antitrust class action lawsuit, where they allege Valve is a monopoly and overcharges on games. Valve vs. Rothschild is Valve fighting a patent troll who keeps demanding more money. And another Consumer vs. Valve class action lawsuit, but this one is in the UK rather than the US, which alleges that Valve has overcharged millions of UK gamers. Lately, there's also been the pressure from payment processors behind the scenes like Visa and MasterCard. So over the past few days, I have been keeping tabs to see if anything happens legally with that situation. But that is when I stumbled upon a brand new lawsuit that just got filed a few hours ago called Smith vs. Valve. Now, this situation actually began back in early 2021 when a group of consumers filed an antitrust class action claiming Valve's policies were a monopoly that artificially inflated game prices on Steam. This was completely separate from any of the other lawsuits that we just listed off. Valve responded by pointing to their mandatory arbitration clause that they had in their terms since 2012. They argued that because the consumers had all agreed to it, the lawsuit couldn't proceed. A judge agreed, and the case was sent to arbitration. So after Valve successfully pushed the case into arbitration, they likely expected a handful of individual claims. But multiple law firms saw an opportunity. One specifically recruited over 70,000 customers through different ads like on YouTube, and would just say that if you bought a game on Steam, you were owed money. This led to literally tens of thousands of people signing up with these law firms, not really understanding what they were getting into. This strategy is known as mass arbitration. This is where the story takes a very interesting turn though. During this time, as Valve was being hit with literally thousands of these arbitration claims, they were able to get their hands on a confidential slideshow presentation from an ex-lawyer at one of these law firms involved in the mass arbitration. This slideshow, which was meant to be private, described the arbitration strategy as a business opportunity. It even listed Valve right in the presentation as a target. The firm's strategy, as described in the slideshow, was to use a large number of cases to force Valve to pay huge amounts in fees, hoping this would pressure them into a large settlement rather than actually fighting each case. The goal was to extract millions, if not billions of dollars out of different businesses. They preyed on Valve specifically as a target, seeing as they have a huge user base, citing over 1 billion user accounts, which means they had a huge pool to recruit from, and were able to recruit people from ads for very little money. Valve saw this as a plot to weaponize its own arbitration clause against them, which was originally designed to pay the fees for an average Steam user, not for huge law firms which see this as a business strategy to make money. So, in response, Valve tried to fight back. They filed their own lawsuit against one of the law firms, arguing that this was an abusive legal tactic designed to overwhelm them. However, a court later dismissed Valve's lawsuit, so while Valve saw this as an unfair tactic, they weren't successful in stopping it in the court. It was at this point in September 2024 that Valve updated the Steam subscriber agreement to change its arbitration clause. The new version removed any mention of arbitration, especially the parts where it said that Valve would pay for the fees. As the cases moved forward, the AAA required Valve to pay the initial filing fees that amounted to about $1.8 million. Valve paid for this, no problem. Everything seemed to be going well until the turning point. In March 2025, the AAA sent Valve another invoice, but this time it was for $20.8 million. These fees are called case management fees, which brings us to the main issue of the new lawsuit. Valve has refused to pay this $20 million for multiple months now. The new legal complaint alleges this isn't because Valve can't afford it, as the company is worth billions, but because they are deliberately trying to stop the arbitration process from moving forward. We originally talked about how Valve was refusing to pay the $20 million back in June, after it was confirmed multiple times by Valve lawyers. So this is where the new lawsuit gets introduced. Officially known as Smith vs. Valve, has been filed by plaintiff Jeffrey Smith, who is represented by the law firm Mason LLP, which was one of the main firms responsible for the mass arbitration attack on Valve. The new 17-page complaint details all the events we just talked about and was just filed on August 5th, 2025. The new lawsuit has two main legal claims. First, that Valve is in breach of its own contract by refusing to pay the required fees. And second, Valve's refusal shows bad faith because they force people into this specific legal process and are now preventing it from working. So you might be wondering, what do the plaintiffs want out of all this? Well, it's much more than just the $20 million in fees. The lawsuit is trying to make Valve pay the fees to get the original cases going again. But the main goal is to get extra money from Valve, which is what all the original arbitration claims were also about, hoping to extract as much money as possible from Steam. The $20 million is literally just the tip of the iceberg, as if all 14,000 claims went through the full arbitration process, the final cost to Valve could be so much larger. While it's impossible to give an exact number, the total cost would likely be in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. For example, a similar mass arbitration case found that a company settled for over $146 million, and if we go back to the presentation, they easily explain how they use this to make billions of dollars with this tactic. Now, although at the moment the entire lawsuit is sort of centered around one guy named Jeffrey Smith, the lawsuit actually wants to represent a whole class of people. All Steam subscribers in the United States who filed an antitrust arbitration claim against Valve that they then failed to pay the fees for. This means if your claim is part of the 14,000 plus people that were held up, you may automatically be part of this new lawsuit. Now, this is a brand new case, so we are in the very early stages, as this is the one and only document filed for Smith vs. Valve so far, and Valve will have a chance to file a response. Before this can proceed as a class action, a judge has to certify it, which essentially just means they have to confirm it. On one hand, the plaintiffs have a strong case for certification because their claims are based on clear objective facts, as Valve is refusing to pay the fees. But Valve will fight this hard. They will almost certainly argue that this entire strategy is an abuse of the